On today's Breaking Views, China and its role in Rio Tinto chief executive's downfall, and how to defuse the Lloyds bonus row. I'm joined now by Chris Hughes, he's Reuters Breaking Views assistant editor. Chris, your piece argues that China played a role in Tom Albanese's downfall. Explain that one for us, please.
Well, we're not saying that directly Beijing rang up Jan du Plessis' office and said, right, it's time for him to go.
No, that would be a story.
But you know, when you think about what went wrong with Alcan, clearly Rio overpaid spectacularly in 2007. But one thing that we're trying to tease out here is the sort of strategic assumption about the competitiveness of Alcan versus Chinese domestic aluminium producers. The thought was, well, look, we're getting this low-cost production here that will be more competitive than Chinese domestic producers, but that went wrong. I mean, what they bet on was sort of rising demand and Alcan being able to capture that. What they didn't bank on was how China's state capitalism operates, which is that basically China, heavily supported and subsidised these otherwise low-cost aluminium producers,
and
which made it very hard.
And he was unaware of this. He didn't think this would happen. I mean, he must have been one of the only ones who didn't think that China would do all it can and could do to prop up and back its own industry.
Yeah, look, I mean, it's fair to say that this isn't in any way excusing Tom Albanese's performance in relation to Alcan, but the extent to which the Chinese rivals of Alcan were able to gain some advantage through whether it be through attractive financing terms from banks or whatever, may have been more than anyone could have foreseen. And there's a broader lesson here about how you plan when you are going to be going into competition with Chinese firms. And there's a very complicated competitive dynamic. You can't just assume, well, hang on, actually we're very efficient, therefore we will prevail. It's a lot more complicated than that.
Well, of course, and the incoming chief executive, Sam Walsh, now we're talking about China, Beijing offering terms, finance and subsidies for its industries. Sam Walsh will be well aware of that, and he's unlikely to pursue the kind of aggressive strategy that his predecessor did.
Well, where Rio goes from here strategically is a good question. The Rio story has been so overshadowed by the fact that it paid too much for Alcan in 2007 lately. We actually thought that Rio had drawn a line under that when it did its first impairment on that.
10
long
billion
before,
wasn't enough.
Yeah, and then they've had to do another one. And actually, analysts are saying there could be some more to come. So maybe, maybe the story isn't quite over. It'll be interesting to see what Walsh does with M&A and Rio going forward. The last two big acquisitions it's done have led to these big impairments, not just Alcan, of course, but this Mozambique Riversdale deal. Is he really going to want to go to investors himself, selling a big transaction? He may be different to the last CEO, but I mean it's going to be a really tough one, I think.
And you suspect the shareholders might be a bit more wary this time around. Finally, let's go on to Lloyds and the chief executive's bonus. Now, Antonio Orta-Osorio, he's entitled to some 225% of his annual salary as a bonus, which is quite staggering, really. If I'm right, was he not off for several months last year as well? I mean, how is this going to be justified?
Well, the issue is not. That was actually the year before. The issue is not so much the actual entitlement here. I mean, the reality is that Lloyd's shares have gone up. They've done rather well. Now you can say that that's partly because of ECB support for the banking sector in general, but Orta-Osorio has actually done a pretty good job in moving forward with the needed restructuring of Lloyd's, and it looks like, when you look at the share price and look at how he's done operationally, it looks like he's set to be entitled to a pretty maybe several million. And that, even though you can say that is deserved, it's going to be a it's going to be a political difficulty, because UKFI, UK Financial Investments, which owns a big stake in Lloyds on behalf of the government, it's going to have to take a view on whether it signs off on the bonus, and it's going to have to tell the Treasury, why it's doing that. So how can you reconcile the two? The fact that actually he's probably entitled to the quantum that the bonus scheme crunches out, but politically it's going to be very difficult to pay it. Well, our suggestion is, why don't you wrap some sort of deferral around it, obviously put as much of it into shares as you can, make it more like a sort of long-term incentive award rather than an annual bonus. That way you can say to the CEO, look, you're getting your full value, but you can say to the government, look, there's been some compromise here, and hopefully that would square the circle.
Let's hope so. Chris, thank you very much and have a good weekend. That was Reuters Breaking Views' Chris Hughes, and for more agenda-setting financial insight, watch our US Breaking Views show every day. That's 12:30 Eastern, 17:30 GMT. I'm Jamie McGeever. This is Reuters.